A day after the launch of the standard gauge railway passenger and freight trains, the headlines were awash with the news of this great project. A battery of journalists were on board the maiden trip, and the coverage was majorly centered on the experience and the environment. Some, however, wanted to hear more on the impact it would have and unanswered questions about the use of resources to realize this project. So let me start with some of the, just a quick look at some of the headlines on that the following day. And this is June 1st on the Standard. SGR roars to life. Of course, this is quite the good headline there of praise and a lot of admiration of this project. And the Business Daily on the 1st of June, of course, it already had just a small picture there, but the story really, the big story then was Safaricom in rise to 900 billion market value. But it had a recognition of this and, of course, more stories within. And then there is a star and execute economic sabotage Uhuru. Of course, the story that carried the day there was what would happen to those who carry out vandalism on the SGR line. And the Daily Nation, the ride of the century. Exactly 18 years after the first railway landed in Nairobi, President Kenyatta inaugurates its successor, a moment of great joy, achievement, as well as some controversy for Kenyans. Just at the face of it, Sabina, and I'm not sure if you were keen on how all this was covered. Were you happy? Do you have misgivings in the coverage of the SGR launch?
I think I was happy. Okay. And for once, we got the positive feedback from media. And after 18 years, when you have a new train, the SGR, I expected more excitement.
You expected more excitement?
More excitement, yes. Because from a lunatic to a Madaraka Express, for sure. Then it was something worth celebration. And I think this is one of the things that, as Kenyans, we are proud of. And I will say personally, I'm very proud of.
Okay.
And so the coverage was good. We would have done better.
Would have done better.
Yeah, but I think I would have also expected a lot of, the normal Monanchi, the Kenyans, to speak about it and also to be featured more. Apart from the photos and everything, the people who took the first ride, I would have expected more of the interviews and the experience, especially the people who mainly use either the train or the bus or the plane from Mombasa to Nairobi and back, especially the people who are also in business. Okay. I would have loved to have much more feedback from them.
Gadara, you laugh at her saying that she expected better.
Well,
118 years is such a long time.
I don't think the Madaraka Express, as they're calling it, is any less loony than the Lunatic Express.
Oh, why do you say that?
Why do you say that?
I think the fact that first that we built a railway next to another one should actually get us thinking. That our president goes after he has built this to say he'll refurbish the other one as a complementary to it. Which, if you read the World Bank report, had suggested instead of building another one, refurbish what you have. I think the whole coverage, for me, the fact that we focus on the coverage of the day of the launch is the problem. We should have been looking from before at the case for actually having that railway built. There's lots of problems with it. There's also problems with the idea that we needed a new one, and also once they started building it, with the cost of what we got. And I don't think we should cover over that. On this celebration of what came. But that said, we are where we are, and what I would want to see going forward is a discussion of, all right, it's here already. Then what do we do about it? How do we utilize it, if we can, to at least try and recoup some of the many millions?
Let me read a line. Let me read a line from Macharia Gaido's column. This was on Monday, May 29th. Actually, a piece that he wrote. SGR is a great project, but let the thieves pay for their sins. And one of the lines here, just directly to what you said, only an utter cynic or perpetual naysayer would deny that the new network, popularly referred to as SGR, contraction of Standard Gauge Railway, will be a game changer in the movement of people and goods from the Indian Ocean coastline to the hinterland, especially after the remaining phases of the Ugandan border are completed. So in the tone of this is a positive thing.
Oh yes, certainly, that one I agree. The only issue which I still wonder about, I agree that the old rail is beyond rehabilitation. I mean, it's finished, it's done.
Based on what?
on engineers.
Um,
I mean, that rail,
Well,
that rail, no, it is true. A railway needs some solid ground on which to carry out that weight. That one, the base is gone, so to speak. But there is still a very valuable way live. I don't know why we had to ignore the existing way live and go about buying land all over the place. And you saw the corruption
a new right of way.
which was involved about that purchase of land. The other thing, of course, is the corruption around it. If money was lost, I don't think we should now sweep that under the carpet simply because we're happy with this development. It could be another Anglo-Leasing, it could be another golden bag.
All right. Tom, you kind of want to sit out of this one, but I'll ask you because of the numbers and you're interested in focusing on what might change the fortunes of the candidates. In your view, as you watch the coverage and the excitement around it, is this a game changer for the Jubilee government? Of course, it's being used as part of the campaign.
I have enough trouble interpreting figures that I already have, let alone making any predictions. But it does seem to me that the timing of the launch in one way is unfortunate for those who genuinely believe it is a game changer, or even those who are perhaps short-sighted and just looking at its contribution to the Jubilee re-election campaign, in the sense that, as was widely reported, and I have to say that when we planned our May national survey, yes, we knew that there was a plan to have the launch at the beginning of June, but this schedule for that survey had been planned way last year,
right,
and would have taken place anyway. So what happens? Just within 3 days, I think it was on the 29th when we released first the presidential result, and then together with approval of the president, and then this question about Kenya's direction. And we found, as was widely reported, nearly 3/4 of Kenyans, 71%, think the country's going in the wrong direction. And even 52%, even a majority of those who identify with Jubilee. So that encouraged me not to assume that cynics or the downtrodden among Jubilee supporters would somehow be offended by all of the fanfare associated with the launch of this railway, but rather just maybe in some ways some sympathy for the government and both governments, I mean everybody who was behind this, that this thing of such historic magnitude had to be launched at a time when so many Kenyans are feeling such a painful pinch of inflation and the other things which are feeding in to this sense of the country's going in a wrong direction. And that does raise or underline the question you've asked that I'll avoid answering, and that is, as we go to the field to do our next survey and ask especially people who have been undecided, asking a question, for example, that we asked before the last election, have you changed your mind about who you would support, or have you moved from being undecided to who you think you're going to vote for in the election in the last couple of months? And for those, maybe a very small percentage, but it can make the difference in a close election, to ask them to give us a couple of reasons why.
Okay.
And then we might elicit some mention of this railway, or not. I mean, we'll see.
If I may say something.
As you respond to this one, Jesse Gitau says, tell Yadara to be an open thinker. Does he buy new shoes, or does he keep mending the old ones?
Now, again,
look at the shoes.
Now, to respond to that, number one, first, the World Bank did look at this before it was built, you know. And they did put a report that's been out there. You can actually find it. It's online. And it speaks about the 4 scenarios that we had. Now, the 2 that came down to is not so much that whether we keep the old railway as it is or get the SGR. You know, for me, the question was: do you build a new railway, which is what the SGR became, on a new right of way, or do you refurbish what you have? Now, I disagree with Macharia saying that you can't refurbish it. Actually, many people thought you could refurbish it. You know, and the point is, you'd have refurbished it at much less cost and gotten the very same performance you're getting out of SGR. That was the point. You know, that we did not need to build a new one to get what SGR is giving us, That's why I'm saying it's a hoax, it's a con. It's as loony as the Lunatic Express.
And probably JM
because we could have gotten the very same performance.
And probably that is echoed by JM Henga, who says, tell Macharia that I'm a structural engineer, and if we can stabilize swamps and waterways, rails are easy. To Sabina Shege, Wilson Korir, and to respond to what Gadara has brought up, Wilson Korir says, SGR is a disgrace. It didn't need that huge coverage by the media. We need to reevaluate our priorities.
I think one thing we need to know is that we had a promise, and I think what was raised here about the timing.
Okay.
We all knew by June this was meant to be ready, and the government had already planned for June. The president was very clear on June, we must be ready. Okay. But I think Kenyans, we need to start appreciating ourselves and what we have. And if you become critics of everything that comes in, you know, if you want to critique everything, you will never find anything good in this nation. Okay. I think we need to start appreciating the little we have so that we can get more. And with the likes, we were saying that yes, you could have refurbished or whatever it is. And you know the other rail was still working on, and we are not saying this is the final one. If we have more demand, we can still refurbish the old one and still go on. And I think that's what the president said he's going to look at it, because it can also be used. I think we need to appreciate where we have come from. 118 years, we have a new railway line, and I think it is important for us to appreciate where we are heading. Okay. But every time if we have to critique, we will not even have a heart. And I think one thing, I'm a politician. And what we have is that by the time you're elected, and I think I want to share with this gentleman here because they've not been in politics, is that people start criticizing everything you do. You don't get anybody to pat your back and tell you you're doing better, but you can still do better. Move on and encourage you. And I think in a life, even when you get a woman or a wife that you marry, and the only thing that she will always talk about you is negative. The next thing
government is not my wife.
It doesn't
is not my family. I will not treat it as if it is.
As an analogy.
It's an analogy. And I think this guy need actually to start appreciating that you are Kenyan and you live in this nation. And you need to start seeing positive things.
It is because I'm a Kenyan that I say when my money is
anything positive out of your own nation.
There's something I did a few days after I wrote that piece, and I gave it for some time to sink in.
Yes.
And then I came up with a post on our Facebook saying, good, now we have celebrated. Let's get back to work. And my point was this. Yes, we have a railway, but let's not go overboard with these celebrations. First of all, it was not the first railway in the world. It is not a, we have not sent a man to the moon. We have not launched a spaceship. It is just a simple goddamn railway as exists anywhere, a very ordinary one. It is not so special. It is not a bullet train. The bashing I got from Jubilee people.
I think that the thing is,
but the thing is this: I got a lot of bashing on one side, a lot of praise from the other side. But all that bashing and that praise was predicted on two things: whether your name starts with O or whether it starts with M, whether you're from the lake or whether you're from Moranga.
Right.
I think
absolutely nobody could look at it for what I am saying. But suddenly some people are, oh, we know you, you're just a Mudhamaki.
Right.
Others are saying, we know you, you're just a traitor. You can never appreciate anything.
And that's something that...
I mean, that was the whole discourse of...
We need to appreciate.
That was the whole discourse.
But that thing about appreciating...
The whole discourse of appreciate, as if the government is doing us a favor.
It's not.
That we need... No, there's a job they have. Now, in my view, they have done a pretty bad job of dealing with my taxes, have dug me into a huge amount of debt that they didn't have to. There's no way I'm going to be patting them in the back or looking for a silver lining when they're screwing me over.
Right.
You know, that I'm not going to accept.
I don't
they
think
are
that's
there to be held. They are there to be held to account. And you should expect, actually, as an elected official, you know, that at every point people will be demanding of you to do your job. Right. And you really, I mean, it shouldn't be the case that you expect when you do it, that they will come and pat you on the back. No.
Yeah. You know? David Ngure says, let's not confuse economic gains with political kingdoms. SGR is a benefit from all angles, period. And there is that appeal for the media to be patriotic. This is a win for Kenya. So we need to, as much, I
welcomed SGR. But not out of patriotism, but because I felt it is good for Kenya in terms of how it will make it much, much easier to move people and goods from Mombasa to inland and vice versa. And even for me at a personal level, if I want to go to Mombasa, I think the train now might be my mode of choice. Can't afford airfares all the time.
Yes.
And driving to Mombasa or taking a bus is something horrid and frightening. So, but not because of patriotism, simple practicalities.
Yes.
And I always say patriotism is the last refuge of this ground.
Would it have been impractical to expect a media house on that particular day or the following day to bring up an article or stories that really question this particular project, while everyone else is singing praises of this project?
I think a lot of the media sang the praises, but also asked the questions.
Okay.
I think most of them, they also asked the questions, that there are still these outstanding issues on whether there was theft or not.
Okay.
The single sourcing, the wheeler dealers who were involved in the procurement, and those are questions which will not go away.
Right.
And let us not forget that theft has no statute of limitations.
Okay.
But in a way, that's bolting the barn door after the horse has run. I mean, my question would be, and maybe we have some media historians here, you know, how probing were these questions being asked 4, 5, 6 years ago, before the ink had dried or even been put on the paper? Because at this point, I'm not saying students of Kenya's political economy, international relations, infrastructure, good movement, stress and efficiency at the port and so on aren't very important subject matter now, but isn't it a bit late to be raising these difficult questions about the wisdom of the entire enterprise when we're told with some pride by the former Prime Minister that they were the ones who conceived of the project?
Yes. And as you close this issue, Jay Sivirika says, the government is not my wife, not my family. Thank you, Sabina. Please, I think your facts are misguided today. Just clarify on that point as you close on this particular issue.
What I want to say is this. I think it's always good to appreciate.
Okay.
Whether I'm elected or not, whether it's your family or something like that. That was just an example I gave. If today you marry a wife, will never appreciate. You go home with meat, she wants something different. You go home with this, she wants something different. I think it's good, human nature, to appreciate the little that has been done.
Yes.
It is good to to criticize whatever happens, and I think what Macharia has said.
My wife is watching.
No,
You can always marry a second wife. I mean, Africans have that option. You can get 3, 4, 5 more.
Exactly.
Something actually.
So it's good to criticize,
Yes.
and I said I agree with either what he has said. If there are other issues that have come up, we are not wishing them away. They should be addressed. But I think for once we are celebrating. And again, I celebrate my birthday every year, not because I'm the first one to be born, but because it is a special day for me.
Something that's been brought up here, you know, there's a lot of credit being taken by the Jubilee government. Is it of any importance to lay the credit to either Kibaki's government or, you know, Uhuru's Jubilee government to actually have realized this particular
I think you have to give credit to both. There were the visionaries who came up with this idea.
Right.
Then there were those who implemented. It's difficult to say who gets the most credit, but I think all get credit. But we are seeing a situation where Jubilee wants to take all the credit.
Yes.
and they spend all their time rubbishing the, what they call the Nusumkate government. And yet it is the one which laid the foundation for all these things. Actually, other than laptops, Jubilee has never initiated anything.
Well, I mean, there's a funny dynamic here. Do you remember when
name one thing.
when Anglo Leasing broke out? When Anglo Leasing came out, and one of the first things the Kibaki government kept saying is, no, this is not us, it's the former government, even though the stealing was happening in their case. We have the reverse here. They say it's not them, it's us now.
Us, yes.
You know, but again, it depends on whether you think the scheme is creditworthy. There's credit to be gained. And I think if things turn south and people saw this for what it is, in my view, as a hoax, very quickly you will find people disavowing it. People saying, no, it's not ours, it's theirs. It's the nature of our politicians. You know, they don't really take stands. You know, they don't own their own, whether it's their problems or their successes.
I think
Okay.
You know, and I think, in a sense, just to respond to what Sabina has said, you know, I think it's very problematic, and I think, to a sense, very dangerous when we think we've got to praise government in order for it to do its
I
job.
didn't say that.
That we've got to sort of encourage it to do its job. The government is, and in my view, is a necessary evil. It is something that you stay with. But as we've known for the last 50 years, it can do really, really bad things to you.
Okay.
You know, and it is actually only the fact that you keep vigilant, you know, that you never sit down and think that the government is your friend. It is never your friend, you know, and they will only do good things, or they will only carry out the stuff you want them to do if they don't have a choice other than to do it, you know, because you punish them every time they don't do it.
Some of these thoughts we'll get into the next discussion of the numbers, and that's going to get Tom happy. And I'll conclude this particular issue on SGR with Jeremiah Karaoke's comment. On SGR, there is need for a balanced appreciation. Then the question of efficiency and investment returns. Keep your comments coming in. Stay with Press Pass.